Hey guys, off the mic sports network here. Off the top rope, another edition of it here. So I'm gonna have a hot take here for you guys. In terms of the Jon Moxley Cope, because I hope to God that they don't do a trilogy here, because you had the match at Revolution that was bad, and then you had this indie rific mud show garbage spectacle that was the street fight for the world title that happened on Wednesday's Dynamite. I think the street fight was worse. I think the street fight was worse. Look, in terms of stuff that happened, yeah, there was more stuff that happened in this match. But what again, I've said it before, what was the point of that? What was the point of that? What did that do at all? Other than, get prove Jon Moxley's a tough guy and Adam Copeland's 50 and can still go. This match plotted around the ring, didn't even get in the ring. Granted, it is a street fight, but it plotted around the ring for and didn't even get in the ring for like 10 minutes. It started out in the audience. You have some odd table bumps. You have the Death Riders getting involved. You have nonsensical storyline points. By the way, Jay White, who was a central figure in all of this, in the buildup, was nowhere to be found. Jay White, the guy who was part of the reason why Cope lost at the pay-per-view in hammering the briefcase into his face, Jay White was nowhere to be found. You had the Death Riders getting involved. You had the Patriarchy, who had no business being in this match because Christian lost his opportunity after he got choked out by Moxley. So you have that doesn't make any sense. The Death Riders come back from the dead after being off of the pay-per-view, and only Wheeler Yuta was involved in that situation. Jay White's not there. And then FTR, who disappeared off the face of the earth to go on Collision and go in trios matches with Daniel Garcia, they're magically back in helping their friend Adam Copeland. And then after the match, Dax Harwood is just all of a sudden mad at Cope for what reason? Again, from a match perspective, in terms of stuff and spots and extreme, and there was some interesting stuff. So, like, there was a DDT on the table that was nice. And there was some other hardcore spots outside of the obvious one that we've talked about on here, which is one of the worst things I've ever seen in any professional wrestling show ever. There was cool stuff that happened in this match. I'm not dismissing that. It was a hardcore match, and it was a, basically a death match level of violence. Like that's what it was. And in that respect, it was better than what they did at Revolution, because what they did at Revolution was a standard boring wrestling match with a stupid finish. This was a indie-rific mud show match with a stupid finish and a very stupid spot, which leads me to say that, to me, of the two matches, if we're comparing both, I hated this street fight more than I hated the match at Revolution, which is another example of why I said they should have only done this one time. This probably would have been the match to do, and it would have landed so much better if A, you don't do that spot, and B, you do this at the pay-per-view, do it in the middle of the show, and then have Tony Storm and Mariah May main event Revolution. And then you don't have to do this, and then you could tell a story of, hey, why is Swerve Strickland a compelling challenger? Even though we know, hey, but have Swerve Strickland and Moxley do something to build to their match rather than Moxley just beat him up randomly at a Collision when you book this title match. So there's a lot of reasons that factor into this outside of just the actual match itself of why I hate this match and what they did, especially after what they did at Revolution. It's another example of why I said they didn't need to do this again. And the fact that they did it is more of an example of why, hey, sometimes less is more. And they did way too much shit in this match, way too much interference, way too much hardcore bullshit. It was like they were trying to overcorrect for what the mistakes that they made at Revolution, and just, hey, let's just do it over and think that, and we'll right every wrong that we did. And instead, I think you created more wrongs and highlighted some of the core issues of what's going on in AEW, because until you kind of figure out how to get back to what you were in the beginning and because I think AEW has just completely lost itself from what it used to be in terms of week to week stories and, compelling matches and stuff. Like, it's just, they've gone away from that, and they've had to resort to with the flagging ratings to do shock and, cheap heat spots like they did in this match. And to me, it's an example of how not to run a place. So until they figure this out, there's never going to be any hope in this place. Like, it's just, to me, like, you have to have better senses and better feel of where your audience is, and they don't know what they are right now. They think that they're still back 4 or 5 years ago where dream matches and, hardcore death match spots that are completely different from what WWE does. Like, listen, if that's what you wanna do, that's fine, but when you do this match that they did on Wednesday after they had done the match at the pay-per-view, two completely different matches. It's like, it's an example of like, you only needed to do one of these. You didn't need to do the bullshit finish, because what did this prove? Like, Jon Moxley was going to be the world champion. We knew that. Like, this, to me, it was a lazy way to get through the week. And, some people will say, well, it wasn't lazy to do that spot. I was like, well, yeah, it was, because it's a cheap reaction spot. And that's the only reason why they okayed it. It was like, oh, this will totally get a reaction. And it got the completely wrong reaction. So, anyway, thanks so much for watching here. I'll see you guys soon. Bye bye.